Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We're just going to give it a couple minutes because people are still coming through.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think as people still continue to join us, I'll just get started. We don't like to run late with these events. So a warm welcome to our first CIPD Northern Ireland Public Policy Forum event. And as like many other events in current times, this isn't perhaps how we might have chosen to run our first forum event, running it virtually. But I'm really delighted so many of you have taken the time out of your day to join us. Perhaps next time it will be face-to-face next time we meet, and actually some of you may already be joining us at the CIPD Northern Ireland Awards lunch next Thursday the 7th of October, which is face-to-face in the Crown Plaza in Belfast. So that's our first face-to-face gathering for some time. And it's really exciting to think that we'll all be able to meet in person, and there are actually some spaces still available for those of you that might want to still join us. That's next Thursday. So anyway, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Lee Panglia and I head up the CIPD in Scotland and Northern Ireland. And I work with a great team of staff and volunteers to deliver a whole series of networks and communities to support our members and to support the profession in Northern Ireland. And this is one of them. So what have we got planned for today? If we just move on to the next slide, thank you. It's an informal session. Our audience that is joining us today is varied in terms of background and experience, so we'll try our best to cover something of interest to you all. But it's an introduction to public policy, why we're going to have a forum, why we're having a forum in Northern Ireland, and we're going to run through some areas of public policy that are of interest to CIPD and to the profession, and that are obviously relevant to the nation. But before I get started, I just need to run through a couple of practical aspects. My fingers are crossed that technology is kind to us today. You're all joining us on mute and will be kept on mute. We will have some time at the end of the session to answer any questions that you might have, so please post those questions into the chat box as you think of them, or post any observations or hellos or whatever you like into the chat box, but we will monitor the chat box and pull out some questions and try and answer as many of them as possible in the session. And the discussion's also being recorded for those that are interested in joining the forum but unable to join the session today, and we won't run over the 60 minutes allocated. So just quickly, I wanted to give an introduction to the team, as many of you will receive emails from us, see us post on social media channels, comment in the press, and will engage with us in different ways. So it's just nice to put some faces to names of those involved in the team, involved in running the CIPD Northern Ireland Public Policy Forum. And of course, our work is supported by our branch chair, Beth, and the great team of volunteers that she leads in Northern Ireland. So why have a public policy forum, or why have a policy forum in Northern Ireland? Our purpose at CIPD is to champion better work and working lives. It's to create good work for the benefit of individuals, employers, the economy, and society in general. This depends on public policy makers having the evidence they need to design those interventions which help or encourage employers, encourage organisations to tackle the big issues. So public policy at CIPD draws on our extensive research, insight, thought leadership, our practical advice, and guidance, alongside the expertise and the experience of our diverse membership. We have members from large businesses, small businesses, public sector, private sector in Northern Ireland, and working with them to help inform and shape the debate to influence government policy and legislation is key. So it's about improving best practice in the workplace, promote high standards of work, and to represent the interests of all our members at the highest level. So we use our findings to influence practitioners and policymakers, and it's really about putting the heart of our vision of better work and working lives at the heart of HR, people, business and policy conversations. So in Northern Ireland, we work closely with our research and policy experts in GB to ensure that the Northern Ireland policy landscape is reflected in any recommendations that the CIPD makes from a UK perspective. We're also now conducting dedicated research and policy areas and gathering evidence that are policy areas that are fully devolved to the Northern Ireland Assembly. And my colleagues Marek and Olivia will share more about that later. We are increasingly asked to represent the views of our members and of the profession in Northern Ireland on a broad range of public policy issues. So this forum will enable us to do this in a far more structured and comprehensive way to ensure that we are confident that the public policy positions that we take, that they represent your views. And also that we can act as a channel for policymakers to broadcast and share key messages. So just very quickly, I wanted to share what Policy Forum might look like before I pass over to my colleagues who will share a little bit more around our evidence and insight and focus. So this slide gives an idea of the different ways in which we engage with our members, stakeholders and policymakers. Activity will be varied from responding to government consultations, to parliamentary lobbying, to holding roundtables with senior political and policy stakeholders. Some of our activity will be planned in advance and some of it will be reactive and responding to ever-changing conditions. And considering what we have gone through and continue to go through with COVID, there's a prime example of where we've had to be agile and responsive. We're learning and we're listening, so if you have any ideas, thoughts, views throughout this session and beyond, then please do share them with us. Whatever the activity that we undertake, we want to put our vision, CIPD's vision of better work and working lives at the heart of Northern Ireland's HR, business and policy conversations. So I'm now going to pass over to my colleague Olivia, who will outline the devolved policy areas, and then both Marek and Olivia will provide a wee bit more detail on what we've been working on and what our plans are from the future. Thank you. Over to you, Olivia.
Thanks, Lee. So if we look at this slide here, we can see that devolution in Northern Ireland has created kind of 3 distinct categories of powers, and some of you will already know this, I'm sure, but the first category is transferred powers, and these are the matters which the Northern Ireland Executive has full responsibility for and full legislative powers. The next category, accepted powers, are those matters where the government in Westminster retains responsibility. And then there's a third category in Northern Ireland, which is kind of special to the devolution and settlement in Northern Ireland. We don't see it in either of the other 2 nations that are devolved, and these are called reserved powers here. And this is a category of powers that the UK government at Westminster generally holds responsibility for, but where the Northern Ireland Executive can legislate for with the consent of the Secretary of State. So that's quite different to the devolution settlement that we see in other kind of countries across the UK. So in terms of the areas of focus for the CIPD, Marek and I will speak through some of these in a bit more detail later on, but there's a number of matters that the CIPD are interested in that the Northern Ireland Executive have full responsibility for, and these include mainly, you can see in the first category there, kind of employment law. All areas of employment law are obviously of interest to us and our members. you will know. Skills policy, we've been doing quite a lot of work on skills policy already, and Marek will talk through some of what we've been doing later. And then kind of the other big area is equal opportunities, and that's in terms of, we do a lot of work on inclusion and diversity, and this is obviously devolved to the Northern Ireland Executive, so we'll use any opportunities we can to influence these areas of policy, and we have been doing some of that already, but we'll go into that in more detail, as I said. So for now, I'll just pass over to Marek. I just wanted to give a very quick overview of the devolved areas of policy. I'm sure a lot of you will already be familiar, but just to set out what we're working with. Marek, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Lee, for the introduction. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It's great to see you all here. As Lee said, I'm Marek Zemanik. I'm the Senior Public Policy Advisor for the CIPD in Scotland and in Northern Ireland as well. What I thought would be useful to do today was to start off by just outlining some of the sort of more general, I guess, challenges for anybody who wants to be involved in public policy making in Northern Ireland. And then, of course, where there's challenges, there's also opportunities. Look at some of those as well, especially for us as an organization that's just starting to be active in the public policy sphere in Northern Ireland. And then we'll go through some of the sort of specific policy areas and outline some of the stuff that we've been already doing and some of our plans that we have, and of course where you guys come in and where you can help us. And we really hope that you'll be able to help us. So I'll start off with the challenges. I think the first, probably most obvious challenge, as I think is probably clear to anybody who has seen the previous slide, devolution is extremely complicated. It is very complicated in Scotland, it is complicated in Wales, but Northern Ireland is a whole different category of complicated. Not to be outdone, of course, by the other devolved nations. There's 3 different kinds of powers, for example, which is already unique across the UK. Now, because it's complicated, it also means that public awareness of the powers is pretty poor. I say public, sometimes it extends to politicians, especially politicians who are based across the water. But because public awareness is quite poor, I suspect that's also linked to this graph that I just wanted to show you here, which is a question of whether people are interested in politics in Northern Ireland. And you see just about 60% of people saying they're really interested in politics. Not that doesn't pique their interest at all. 40% say they are sort of interested in politics. So with low public awareness, low interest in politics, that certainly is a challenge for anybody who wants to try and work in this space. The one area that I wanted to highlight is, I guess, the disparity between the different powers in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland has quite a lot of spending power, for example, in areas like social security. It has a lot of regulatory power, things like employment law, but it's quite mismatched when it comes to taxation powers. For example, there's no powers over income tax, which Scotland now has virtually in full. Wales has to a certain extent as well. But then on the other hand, it has powers over corporation tax, completely uniquely out of all the devolved nations as well. So I guess these complexities is something that we sort of have to deal with, and it certainly is a challenge for anybody who wants to work in public policy. Now, to make things even more complicated, even in areas where there are powers that reside with the executive or the assembly, sometimes even those are not really used. So employment law is actually a pretty good example of this, where very often the executive simply decides to follow what's happening in GB employment law. This is mostly due to the so-called parity principle, where things are followed to a large extent in some of these reserved areas. The second really significant challenge, of course, is the political landscape and the political instability in Northern Ireland. The past still very much looms large over the political scene. Certain recent developments have reignited certain issues as well, and of course this is not anything that's been resolved or looks like it's going to be resolved anytime soon. Of course, we have an upcoming election in Northern Ireland, expecting it to be probably in May. Now, that also means that timing-wise, right now, we're sort of already, I guess, in the run-up to the election, which means things are sort of slowly grinding to a halt whilst political parties are preparing for their election campaigns. Now, when it comes to, so these are sort of structural challenges for any sort of policymakers. When it comes to policy challenges, I just thought I would highlight a few here: productivity, the disability employment gap, economic activity, low skills, jobs at risk of automation. Now, the reason I highlighted these five is because across these five, Northern Ireland actually is the worst, or in some of the worst positions across all of the UK nations and regions as well. Productivity in particular, disability employment gap, so that's the difference between the employment rate of people with disabilities and people without disabilities. The gap is the biggest in Northern Ireland out of all the nations. Economic inactivity, so these are people who are not unemployed, but also not employed, so people who either can't work or are not looking for a job. Particularly high rates of economic inactivity, especially amongst middle-aged men in Northern Ireland. Low levels of skills, as well, a significant challenge for the economy. And of course, thinking about issues like the Industry 4.0, jobs at risk of automation. One study suggested that Northern Ireland has the highest proportion of jobs at risk of automation out of all the nations and regions in the UK. So these are some of the challenges. Of course, not to forget one big one over the last 18 months, COVID, which brought a whole host of challenges for policymakers and for professionals like yourselves as well. But as I said in the beginning, where there's challenges, there's also opportunities. And COVID-19 is no exception there. I mean, certainly the last 18 months have been the biggest homeworking experiment this country has ever seen. And it was, of course, you as people professionals and HR professionals who have enabled this humongous shift to homeworking. Now it's now up to us to be able to learn the lessons from this these last 18 months and apply them to whatever the new normal looks like, you know, in terms of what this means for productivity, for example, what it means for job quality for employees, how do we avoid creating a two-tier workforce, what does this mean for skills as well. And the other thing I wanted to highlight here is what this means for inclusion. Now we know that flexible work, for example, is a really important enabler for inclusive recruitment, and especially considering the disability employment gap statistics, which I just mentioned. I think this is something where we could really make a difference in Northern Ireland. And of course, in terms of skills delivery as well, that's another thing to keep in mind. A lot of colleges and other skills and education providers had to adapt over the last 18 months. A lot of content shifting online to enable people to learn in different ways. And that is something that we need to build on. It has to become a much more of a bigger feature of education policy. In terms of some of the other opportunities, this is one that I wanted to mention. Northern Ireland, despite the swathes of powers that Northern Ireland has, there is a bit of a dearth of think tanks. There's a few organizations that are attached to some educational institutions. There is one think tank that is relatively new, but certainly compared to even Scotland, even though Scotland does pretty poorly on the think tank front as well, there certainly is a great opportunity to show some creative thinking and outline some policy ideas that are not coming from the sort of usual suspects as think tanks. The other opportunity I want to highlight is that we have over the last few months seen some legislative movement in certain areas of our focus, certainly on job quality. For example, the Department for the Economy has outlined that it wants to introduce what's called a Better Jobs pledge. I will speak about it in a few moments, but it's a great opportunity for us to be involved in this topic. There's a big skills strategy document published just a few months ago, which was our first opportunity to send in a submission on behalf of the CIPD and of our members with a bit of consultation, pulse survey, some roundtables with members. Some of you may have been present there, and we sent in our response, and we certainly want to shape the strategy a little bit more in the months to come. And of course, the biggest opportunity of all, as I mentioned, there is an election coming up next year. We will be producing our own election manifesto for this. Now, the election manifesto has to be a reflection of the views of our members. So we want to do a lot more engagement with you as our members, so that you can tell us what our areas of focus are meant to be, what our ideas should be, what should we ask political parties to adopt in terms of policies. Without you, I can only sit here try and come up with ideas, but ultimately it should be your ideas that we present to politicians. Okay, now in terms of the areas of focus, I'll just run through a few of them, and then Olivia will jump in as well. On job quality, I think that was the first one that I wanted to mention. If you look at our logo, right, it has our purpose in it: championing better work and working lives. That is the purpose of our organization. So any conversation about job quality, we should be at the heart of that. We have years and years of research on job quality. We have the experience and expertise of our members, who are crucial when it comes to improving job quality for employees across small, medium, or large businesses, public sector, private sector, and all different kinds of industries. We should be the ones leading the conversation. And as I said, there is stuff already happening in Northern Ireland on job quality. So the Belfast City Council is currently working on what's called the Belfast Business Promise, which is a sort of charter type initiative similar to what's happening in Manchester, up in Liverpool, or in London as well, where businesses are encouraged to sign up to a series of pledges. A bit broader than just job quality, because they include some procurement and environmental issues as well. But nonetheless, we were part of the working group there and trying to shape the initiative as much as we can. The Better Jobs Pledge, as I mentioned, the Department of the Economy is introducing this initiative, which effectively is going to ask medium and large businesses to sign up to a series of job quality measures if they want to receive any public support from the executive or any of its agencies, as well as take part in procurement potentially. A big change, very much inspired by the Fair Work First approach in Scotland. The Northern Irish Statistics Agency is currently working on a series of metrics. We want to be involved in that as well. Now, the way we get involved in that is by producing our own research. Now, one of the biggest pieces of research that the CIPD does, it's called the Good Work Index, which is a big report, UK-wide report, based on a survey of about 6,500 employees. Long survey measuring many different dimensions of job quality. It's written around the sort of 7 good work dimensions that we identified maybe 5 or 6 years ago at the CIPD. This year, for the first time, we're creating a dedicated report for Northern Ireland, which will be published on the 9th of November, if I manage to write it in time, of course. But we've got the survey back, we've got the numbers back, and there's lots of exciting detail there, lots of data for policymakers to get stuck into. So we're hoping that can really make a meaningful contribution to some of the work that we want to do. Now, one element of job quality is, of course, the access to a range of employee benefits, which brings me nicely to one area of work where we've done a lot of work in Northern Ireland over the last few months, which is bereavement leave and pay, where we have joined multiple organizations in a campaign to try and extend bereavement leave and pay to employees in Northern Ireland. I'll bring Olivia in here because she was leading the work and still is leading the work on that, so she can talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Marek. Yeah, so some of you will know that the parental bereavement leave bill is currently making its way through the Northern Ireland Assembly, and this bill will bring Northern Ireland employees into line with employees across the rest of the UK. And Marek talked earlier about that kind of parity principle. This is a good example of that. So the parental bereavement leave bill was brought in to Great Britain in 2020, and it's now making its way through the Assembly so that right will be extended to employees in Northern Ireland as well. But Marek mentioned that we are part of a coalition of organisations who are campaigning to see bereavement leave extended even further. So the parental bereavement leave bill only means that if you lose a child under the age of 18, you're entitled to 2 weeks statutory bereavement leave and pay. We want to see that leave and pay extended to anyone who is bereaved of a close relative. So our definition of close relative includes kind of child of any age, a sibling, parent, grandparent, and a spouse or a partner. The numbers in terms of children under the 18 in Northern Ireland who die are tiny, and while we're very grateful for that, it means that the parental leave and pay bill only extends to a very minimal number of employees. So we want this extended so that more employees have that time that they need when they're bereaved. Our original aim for this campaign was to see this extension introduced after the Assembly election next year, and we still think that is the most likely outcome, but we are delighted that we've had so much support from across this Assembly at this stage. As a coalition, we've been involved in every meeting, and we've so far met with MLAs from almost every party that's represented in the Assembly. Only the party where the Minister has responsibility, we haven't met them yet, but we have met with some of the civil servants and discussed that as well. And actually, even better, Marek a couple of weeks ago, I think now, gave evidence to the Economy Committee, who are doing their scrutiny of the parental bereavement leave and pay bill, and some of the MLAs on that committee have raised this extension that we're campaigning for. So we're delighted that so much support has already been given to the campaign, and we'll continue to push that after the elections as well. So if we move on to the next slide. Thanks, Marek. So another area of focus for us at the CIPD is flexible work. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the work that we've done in this area in the past, and in February we launched this campaign, the details of which you can see on the slide, which is called Flex from First. The campaign is calling on organisations and both the government in Great Britain and the executive in Northern Ireland to make flexible working a request a day one right. So employees should have the right to request flexible working from day one of employment, whereas currently it's after 26 weeks. The pandemic has obviously shone a light on home working, and that's great. It's showing organisations that their employees can work in a different way, and we were all kind of forced into that, I guess, 18 months ago when COVID hit us out of the blue. But home working is obviously not the only type of flexible work, and this campaign, as a part of this campaign, is to show all the different types of flexible work that are available and how we can make this work for organisations in all different sectors and industries, because we know that while many employees have benefited from working from home during the pandemic, there are many more employees who haven't been able to do that just due to the nature of the job that they do. But we believe that flexible work really can be afforded to everyone because there's so many different types, and it's about helping organisations and the government to see that. Some of you will obviously know that the UK government just recently introduced their flexible working consultation, and our proposal is part of that, and obviously we're delighted. But again, that will mean that employees in Great Britain, if this goes through, will be entitled to something that employees in Northern Ireland won't yet be entitled to. So you can see at the bottom of the screen there some of the work we've already done. We've met with civil servants from the Department for the Economy, and we've written to all of the economy ministers that have been in place in Northern Ireland since February. There's been a few, and we'll continue to push this issue in Northern Ireland because our campaign isn't won until we achieve this for employees right across the UK, not just those employees in Great Britain. So I'll pass back over to Marek now, who'll talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing around skills.
Thank you, Olivia, and thank you for a couple of questions in the chat already. That's great. Just keep them coming, please. I promise I will not be speaking for too much longer, and we can then get into the actual Q&A bit as well. Now, the other area that we wanted to talk about briefly is skills. Skills is an area where we do quite a lot of work UK-wide, and it makes sense for it to be an area of focus in Northern Ireland because it is an area that is virtually fully devolved. I say virtually because things like the apprenticeship levy, which I'm pretty sure many of you will have very strong views on, is of course set UK-wide. But in terms of skills, the importance of skills to the economy, to individual business productivity, but also individual well-being and individual job quality is well researched. So it makes sense for us to focus on that. There's a lot of L&D professionals amongst our membership as well with their own unique insight. One of the areas that we did focus on in particular, especially when it came to the response to the skills strategy, was in this area of lifelong learning. I mentioned Industry 4.0, which is these sort of fast changes that are coming down the line in terms of automation, rise of AI, machine learning, etc. We've long made the case that our skill system in Northern Ireland is not prepared for this. COVID has actually made there have been some changes as a result of COVID to the type of skills development opportunities that there are, but that needs to be turbocharged even further. We need to look at how we, for example, target some of those thousands of economically inactive adults as well and bring them back into the workforce. As a few other areas as to how we can try and boost skills demand and supply. So it's an area that we want to do a lot more work on, but not just on lifelong learning, of course. We'll talk about youth opportunity as well, and skills for young people, especially in the context of a sort of post-COVID world. And this is where I'll bring Olivia back again to talk about our second big campaign that we've had over the last few months.
Thanks, Marek. Yeah, as Marek mentioned, I guess youth opportunity has been highlighted as a result of COVID. We know that our young people have been through a lot in the past kind of 18 months with exams being cancelled and changed and all sorts of things, and there was worry about how that might impact them as they head out into the world of work. So this campaign is really about addressing that issue, and the campaign aims to create 1 million opportunities for young people across the UK. So this extends to every kind of nation and region of the UK. And what we're asking is that we're asking employers to offer young people any sort of opportunity, whether it be a job or work experience, an apprenticeship, even a volunteering opportunity or mentorship. And this is just really to give them that kind of first step of them getting into the job market, I guess. So the campaign launched in August, and it launched with a report which kind of highlighted the opportunities that the governments across each of the nations have that they can support employers to create these opportunities for young people. And alongside the main report, Marek wrote a kind of dedicated blog PDF on the specific support available in Northern Ireland from the executive to employers to help them create these opportunities. So I would encourage you all to go and have a look at that if you haven't already. It really highlights the opportunity, the support that's available. The next stage of the campaign will look at career services, and that will launch in November. So this really is an ongoing campaign. It's huge. We want to, well, our ambition is to create 1 million opportunities, so you know that doesn't happen overnight. But we'll keep pushing at this, and any support we can offer as well to employers to create those opportunities. That is what this campaign is really about. At this stage, I'll pass back again to Marek for the final area of focus.
Thank you, Olivia. The final bit that I wanted to talk about is productivity. Now, many of you will have probably heard of what is being referred to as the productivity puzzle, trying to find reasons for why the UK is lagging behind some of our competitors, not just the US, but look at, for example, France or Germany as well when it comes to labor productivity output per hour. Northern Ireland is in the UK one of the worst performing. So the UK has a challenge as a whole. Northern Ireland's challenges are even more acute when it comes to productivity. So it's an area that we want to be, I guess, involved in as well. Now, of course, there's no silver bullets when it comes to productivity. Some of these areas that I pulled out here are seen as a sort of productivity drivers: infrastructure investment, capital investment, of course, by companies, research and development, etc. But if you look at just these three, well, these are the three areas that our profession has a very key role to play in, of course. It's some of the areas of focus that we spoke about already. There's more and more research out there that shows the relationship between job quality and individual productivity, and of course, an individual productivity linked to business productivity, which is then linked to country's productivity. People management, very well-known, well-researched gaps when it comes to people management and management quality between the UK and some of our continental competitors, for example, and then skills, obviously skills, utilization, mismatch, overqualification, all issues that we've been speaking about for many, many years in Northern Ireland and across the UK as well. So these are some of the issues that I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot more over the coming months. Just to give you, I guess, a flavor of some of the topics that we are looking at. If there's anything that you think that we missed, if there's anything that you absolutely disagree with, if there's any other comments or any other questions, please just let us know right now or after the event. It would be great to hear from you. The purpose of this policy forum really is to engage in a discussion, to get people together who are interested in public policy, and to exchange information in this way. So I think we'll move on to the Q&A. I think I might just stop sharing my screen, which might just be the easiest thing to do. I hope that's it. I think that's it. I saw a few questions coming in the chat, so I'm going to pick up the first one directly from Graham on better jobs and better work. And I think it's actually a very good question, because I remember long before I started being interested in job quality research, before I started working for the CIPD, I do remember people talking about better work, and I probably my initial instinct was probably similar to Graham's, which was better jobs. Everybody wants better jobs. And what does that actually mean? Well, the CIPD has done lots of research on what job quality actually means, and we have a very clearly conceptualized idea of job quality across 7 different dimensions. For most people, I guess, they will immediately go to things like pay, and they will go to contractual stability, for example. But it goes beyond that significantly. You know, we talk about things like work-life balance. We talk about things like the design of work, job autonomy, job complexity, for example, opportunities to develop skills. Of course, relationships at work, very important as well. Opportunities for voice, and it's not just collective voice, it can be individual voice as well, meetings with managers, etc. And then very important, health, well-being, not just physical health, mental health issues like presenteeism, for example, making sure that people don't go to work when they're not feeling well enough to do so. All these dimensions of good work are underpinned by swathes and swathes of guidance that we produce at the CIPD for our members as well, and of course that's something that then impacts and influences our public policy views as well, and our findings and our discussions with our members impact the discussions that we then have with policymakers. So yes, I think it goes beyond just saying we want better work. We know what better work looks like. We understand the complexities and the intricacies. Different industries will have different challenges, of course. Different sized businesses will have different challenges there as well. There's no one silver bullet, but understanding exactly what it is and what some of the complexities are, I think we have that understanding. So no, I'm not sure that's if that answers the question, Graham, but hopefully at least a bit. See if there's any other questions or.
Marek, the next, it's very difficult for Marek to read the chat and answer the questions the next time. So there's a comment and a question from Scott Alexander. Good to see you getting through to some politicians. The NI Assembly exec hasn't approved any employment legislation for years. Are we able to focus on policy developments if they keep delaying things? There's also a further question from Scott on, have you been able to get before the entire economy committee to highlight the cross-party benefits of these initiatives? So the answer to your second question, Scott, is not yet, but we would like to. And Marek and Olivia, do you want to pick up the comments around?
Actually, the answer to the second question is yes, because
bereavement. Sorry,
but it was only on bereavement. It was only on bereavement. So the bereavement evidence was in front of the economy committee, which is cross-party, and we spoke to them. I very much hope that we'll be able to give them more evidence as time goes on. I'm sure they'll be doing more evidence gathering on, for example, the skills strategy. The consultation for that just closed at the end of August. So the next stage of that is will come further down the line. On the first question, I highlighted some of the challenges in my first slide, and political instability was one of them, and it is, of course, a very fair point. Things sometimes take a lot longer in the assembly. Employment law is a good example where I think the executive is still playing catch up with some of the changes that have come down the line over the last 4 years. Of course, there was no executive for 3 years or so. So it is challenging, but all we can do is we can take it at face value and do our best and just understand some of the intricacies when we speak to the relevant stakeholders. We know, for example, if there's an election coming up in a few months, it's probably more productive to try and influence the manifesto process of the individual political parties rather than try and influence the government minister just now, try and get a meeting with them to see, because realistically not much is going to get done. So it's probably more productive to try and get something into a manifesto of whoever we think might be in charge or close to being in charge after the election. So that's a very rambling answer to. I'm not quite sure if that's helpful, but there's challenges like this with each legislature, and we have very similar challenges in Scotland as well, where things just don't get done for a very, very long time. And I think it's just part of the course.
I should also add, just to the bit about working cross-party, we have also had, as well as Marek's evidence to the whole committee, we have had various meetings, as I mentioned, with MLAs from all the different parties, and I think, and it is just on bereavement leave at this stage, but there is consensus from them that in order to get kind of employment law changes, and I mean this area of employment law in Northern Ireland hasn't been changed since 1996, so you're not wrong about it being a very long time, and I think they recognise the benefits of working cross-party with that, so that is an area that we are, that is something that we're highlighting to them, I guess, at every opportunity. Do you want me to go with the next question? The next question is about AI and automation. So, so they're saying, as we develop thinking around AI and automation in the workplace, are we not facing a paradox in that AI is a front runner in providing alternatives to those roles that can't be flexible or based at home? So should we as the CIPD not embrace AI and automation so that we can have a greater input into a controlled and managed integration? And we are doing some work on this, but I'm not directly involved. I don't know, Marek, if you can expand.
So, I mean, probably the first thing I would say is that if I gave the impression that somehow we are not embracing AI or automation, then that's the wrong impression. That's not the impression I wanted to give. We are doing a lot of research on Industry 4.0 and what it means for public policy and for practitioners as well. I think some of the early conclusions from that you might read in the media or might have read in the media over the last few years about how robots are coming to take our jobs, I think are quite premature. I think the evidence actually suggests that there probably is a net benefit to jobs. It's just different kinds of jobs when it comes to AI and automation. So then I think the discussion becomes more about how do we create an agile and flexible skills system? How do we make sure that we have a right sort of skills baseline when it comes to things like essential skills, transferable skills, meta skills? There's 5 different names for the same thing, basically. But it's these sort of skills that will allow humans to flourish, I guess, in a future where AI and automation plays a much bigger role. So yes, it's an area where we certainly want to do a lot more work in. It's an area where my colleagues are doing work in. This is very much not a regionalized piece of work because it's something that applies UK-wide. We will be speaking to our colleagues to see whether sort of any of the findings of the research are applicable to Northern Irish settings, certainly in areas like skills, as I said. That's where we will have a specific position on. Yeah, I think that's probably it.
Thanks, Marek. I can't see any more questions in the chat yet, but if anyone has any final questions or observations, we have a few more minutes. We can go through them. I just wanted to say that thanks for joining, and you'll all be added to my list of people who have joined this session and might be interested in future Policy Forum events. So if you don't want to be on my list, I guess, let me know. But we'll be doing, as Lee mentioned at the beginning, we'll be doing more kind of Policy Forum events, and you'll have the opportunity to feed into our work going forward. We've got one final question, I think, one more that's came through, Marek, and it's about gender pay. So do you know where the Assembly is at in terms of gender pay regulation?
Yeah, so we don't have any immediate insight as to where it's at right now. What we do know is, of course, is something that's been legislated for many years ago, but it's just not been put in, enacted in Northern Ireland yet, alongside, by the way, ethnicity and disability pay gap reporting as well. I suspect this is something that will come back after the election. I think we need to keep a close eye on the manifestos of the individual political parties. Our position on it is very clear. We've always been in favor of this, and I think we'll be lobbying for this to appear in the manifestos and then to be a part of the legislative program after the election as well. I would not expect anything to come out this side of the election anymore, unfortunately. All I would just maybe add, you don't have to feel pressure just to send comments or ask questions like right here in this instance. Please feel free to speak to us, to contact us. You can find our emails on our website very easily. Just drop us a line with any comment or any sort of question. As Lee said in the beginning, we're hoping this is the beginning of a series of engagement events, and that. Sorry, I just saw the question. I just saw the question coming, which is. Which I'm happy to try and answer, but what I will say is we don't have a position as a forum. The purpose of the forum is to have a discussion and just to ascertain what CIPD members feel and what their views are on specific topics. And when it comes to alignment, it may well be that this is one of the topics that we discuss. I don't think it will be there'll be a universal position on alignment. I suspect it will be very individual and topic dependent. We are guided by our members' views, and I think that's probably the right way to do this. Yep, more questions. A few more minutes. Let's have a look. Oh, excellent. There's not a question, more of a comment. Sharon, that is excellent. Thank you. That is great. We may just get in touch with you actually and use that in any sort of future engagement. That's very useful. Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate that.
Marek, could I just say something there? It's really interesting, Sharon, that you bring this up, because when we're looking, for example, at the flexible working consultation that Olivia mentioned earlier, we are consulting with our members in GB, and we are discussing as a team, because this is new, the consultation only was released last week, and we have, I don't know how many weeks to respond, forgive me, Olivia and Marek, you'll know the date of the thing, but we are aware that many of our members in Northern Ireland have workforces in GB. And usually we might not automatically come out and ask for your views, so it may be that, and I guess I'd welcome your views on this at some point around whether there are many members in Northern Ireland with the workforce in GB that would like to be involved in the consultation. I think a learning for us next time is to not put everybody's microphones off so that you can actually speak. But we learn every time we do these virtual events, we learn. So, and I'm really sorry about that we can't. I don't think we can take your microphone off and let you have a say. But I'm really pleased that you brought that up, because that is something that we're considering when we're looking at consulting with our members. Mm-hmm. Good. Right.
In addition to what you said, Lee, about consultation, Sharon, I was also going to add that we will want to know what kind of events that you guys want us to put on for the forum. So if you wanted to discuss gender pay, for example, or ethnicity pay, whatever, what we'll do is we'll have a survey that I'll send out after this, and it'll ask what your areas of interest are, so that our policy forum events are things that our policy forum, our members want to discuss. And we don't want to, as Lee said, there will be times when we do things that are reactive, but there will also be planned events, and part of those planned events can be to discuss areas of interest to you as well. So that might be a good example of something that you want to discuss. But I'll put together a survey and I'll send that out to everyone following the event.
And I think the other thing, just quickly before we finish, to pick up on your point, Sharon, is about that sharing of best practice and case studies, because we do that already, but I think there's a lot more that we can be doing, and to address the point earlier, and forgive me, I can't remember if it was Scott or Graham, around, you know, should we be continuing to focus on public policy when actually nothing can change at the moment or isn't changing? We've got to remember that we can still look at how we help or encourage employers to make changes and to tackle those big issues, and that works kind of in parallel with the focus on influencing policy. And we shouldn't forget that, or we try not to forget that. So that kind of sharing of best practice in the workplace and that promotion of high standards of work is part of this forum too. So sorry, Marek, we have completely taken away from what you were saying there.
I honestly can't remember what I was saying, to be honestly, but I think what I was going to say was that there's going to be a series of different events. Olivia just mentioned that we will try and get your opinion on that as well, and that, you know, the next big thing for us after the Working Lives Northern Ireland report is the manifesto, and I, you know, really value the input of our members on that, because it should be your priorities that we put in there. So please look forward to us asking for more information from you, is I guess what I wanted to say.
Okay, so if no one has any other questions, listen, thank you so much for joining the discussion or listening to our discussion. As I said at the beginning, this is really just an introduction to the forum. It's a network that will grow over time, so please do join us again, share your views and observations, help us, share the word, bring more people along. Our discussions will be a wee bit more tailored around certain topics next time. We will definitely give you the chance to speak. But we're really, this is, you know, a great thing. It's really exciting. So we look forward to working with many of you at future events. So thank you.